Good afternoon, it's Thursday the 30th of June 2016, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Brian Gerrish. With me in the studio, Mike Robinson. Well, the weather is sunny here in Plymouth, and I think that things are beginning to improve across the rest of UK, although it's been pretty rainy and gloomy, which is a shame for Wimbledon, but there we go. Well, we're going to start with the sad story that apparently Britain's students are depressed. This is a result of Brexit. They're grieving for the loss of the cultural enrichment which Europe brings. And I believe that some of the universities, Mike, are offering counselling.
Good stuff. That's just what people need, more counselling.
Which is good. Now, we wondered whether perhaps students were depressed because they're into highly sexualised behaviour. They've got a bit of gender confusion creeping in. And of course, there's the alcohol and the drug let down after a good night on the town. But these students don't seem worried that they're being taught subjects that have got no real long-term job prospects. So surfing coach, for example, excessive fees. They're not worried about that. They're not worried that they can't get a job in the future. They're not worried that they haven't got any pension prospects. They're not depressed because they can't really get any NHS treatment. They've got colleagues being selected as future leaders. And of course, if you're not selected, then you're going to be kept down. No spiritual and moral guidance, no national and community identity. But apparently it's Brexit. I think the students need to wake up a little bit to what's going on. And of course, 2/3 of young people didn't vote at all, presumably because they were too busy playing video games. Well, if you're depressed, and sometimes our viewers say, what do you deliver UK column is pretty hard. Well, we have this for you today, which is an exclusive. Here we go. The UK column exclusive is that we have identified the post-Brexit border controls, and these are going to be based on what's known as the high-tech EU gate system. So there is a picture of the gate system installed. Now, there has been some controversy because critics claim the system has weaknesses, but apparently Theresa May has stood by the gate and she claims it does act as an effective barrier. And we can confirm this because experts say that Theresa May stood in front of the gate.
Right.
So the gate is there. What's on either side of it, we're not too sure, but this is apparently how the EU gate system will work.
Excellent.
More serious things.
The post-EU gate system, anyway. Yes, well, more serious things, perhaps not. This is the Financial Times telling us that city jobs market is facing prolonged slowdown after the Brexit vote. They're saying the city's hiring market is in for a prolonged slowdown as uncertainty triggered by the Brexit vote compounds already difficult conditions for financial services. They quote Dee Simons, a managing director at Russell Reynolds, who says it's been a tough hiring environment anyway, and it just got tougher. We're in June, so the next 2 months over the summer would typically be quiet for city hiring, Brexit or no Brexit. He said right now executives are mainly hunkering down and getting on with their day jobs rather than hiring. Well, my comment on this, Brian, is this is pretty good news because perhaps some of these people with their PhDs from Oxbridge will go and do something more productive instead.
We would hope so.
Yes. But of course, the big news of the day is that we were completely wrong about this and Boris is not standing, honest gov. So Boris isn't standing, but let's just remember that, of course, only a couple of weeks ago, Michael Gove said he wasn't standing either. So we don't really know whether Boris is going to stand or not. At the moment, he's saying not, but that could, I mean...
Well, I still say, Mike, that the dangerous person is Theresa May. So there's manoeuvring around Theresa May. And of course, at the moment, she comes out as the squeaky clean. And of course, it's a lady, so we can all trust her.
Yes, well, a couple of hours before Boris made his announcement, Michael Fabricant said that he was transferring his support to Michael Gove. And as you can see from this picture, this is Boris Johnson looking in the mirror, so he would know, I guess, before the official announcement.
It's pretty bad.
Yes. So there you go. That's the Tory party leadership election in a nutshell.
The lineup at the moment. Well, I wanted to bring home to people Oliver Letwin, because it's becoming very clear that a lot of people have no idea of the power of this man. This is the man running the British government. N.M. Rothschild man, of course. He's totally in control of the cabinet. He's in control of Tory policy. He's in control of David Cameron. This man is running the country. And I just thought I'd bring up the text from this Spectator article. So this was the government's own comment. The Prime Minister proposed and the Cabinet supported the establishment of a new unit to lead intensive civil service work on the issues that will need to be worked through in order to present options and advice to a new Prime Minister and a new Cabinet. This unit will be based in the Cabinet Office. It will bring together officials from that department, from the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, the Treasury, and possibly others. It will report to the Cabinet, and it will obviously be engaging with departments across Whitehall on relevant issues, as well as working closely with officials from the devolved administrations. Alongside this, Oliver Letwin will play a facilitative role, hearing views from across the government and outside on issues that need to be considered by the new unit. Now, if you think about what's said there, the Cabinet Office, which Letwin controls, is going to be put in charge of Brexit, and it's going to be set up to the entire satisfaction of the Cabinet Office, which is Oliver Letwin. So there is no doubt that the man we should all be watching at the moment, who is controlling the government, is Oliver Letwin. We'll move on to this one. And just think about how the control system in the British government works. We have not forgotten that Conservative whip Tim Fortescue is on BBC video footage calmly saying that when MPs came to the whips with problems over little boys, we're talking child abuse, Tory whips fixed it. So they would do as the whips asked. This is how the policy is run inside the Conservative government. And when David Cameron says everyone in government has signed up to his plans, well, presumably this is the sort of tactic that's being used to make sure that the common purpose line is followed.
Wasn't Michael Gove's last government job as Chief Whip?
Yes, and if you follow it through, Mike, you find that all the, I'm going to use the word politically dangerous figures have inevitably been in the whip's post. And I think this is because they've got the viciousness to actually undertake this role and make sure the rest of the government, the backbenchers, stay in line. Well, let's take another look at David Cameron. This is a figure that often comes up, stay with me, Kim Jong-un from North Korea. And the Telegraph here is crowing because he's created a new Supreme Affairs Commission and put himself in charge of it.
Right.
Which sounds a little bit like the Brexit office. So we'll just bring that in alongside. Oliver Letwin creates and heads a new Supreme State Brexit Commission. And if you think I'm being a little bit unkind here, well, let's remember this one. We had the Mirror and many other papers reporting that Kim Jong-un had got rid of government material. Thousands of articles were removed from government agency archives in a rewriting of history. And our very own David Cameron did exactly the same thing by removing all of the pre-2010 speeches and documentation. So here we've got this puppet show. We're supposed to be in a democracy, but actually what we've got is very, very devious individuals in suits. I've said truth is an inconvenience, and I think this is pretty close to it. And if we stay on the topic here, these were some of the articles, of course, where the press have been talking about the state of our politicians, the expenses, the sex scandals, the drugs, the rent boys. We've got Francis Maude, Tory Minister of Transparency, oxymoron from the base up. What did he do? Well, he was linked into the lies over the use of common purpose, and I know we'll be mentioning them later in the news. Common purpose to train the top 200 civil servants. That was an insider deal through the Cabinet Office. And we've got one gentleman here, Mr. Carmichael, who actually admitted to the press that basically the MPs were lying. So should we be worried at the state of the country? I think so. We'll just ram this home because, of course, going back a few weeks, we had David Cameron saying there was no chance of scrapping EU rules on ever closer union. So that was coming in from Brussels, but of course, David Cameron was getting his marching orders from the Brussels team. And at the same time, he was wrecking Britain's military and ramping up the rhetoric against Russia. And I'm going to bring in Boris Johnson because, of course, the moment that Brexit vote was over, he was busy talking about the need to intensify cooperation with the EU. So we could say liars, cheats, and hypocrites, I think, Mike, and we're not far off it.
Right. Well, let's talk a little about cooperation with the EU and particularly on military matters. This is RUSI. We've talked about them quite a bit recently. The last couple of days, they've been holding their Land Warfare Conference. The Land Warfare Conference, held annually on behalf of the Chief of General Staff, will reflect the breadth of challenges confronting today's land forces in a global security environment characterized by constant competition and unpredictability. While the British Army is at its smallest for 2 centuries, the tasks assigned to it range ever wider, from national resilience at home and countering terrorism overseas to conventional deterrence against state threats through restoring the capability for warfighting at a scale. And they're covering uncertain threats at this. They covered uncertain threats at this conference, uncertainties of state, non-state, and hybrid threats. They covered theories and practices for adaptability, insights from historical, contemporary, and private sector adaptability. They covered partnering for adaptability at home and internationally, whether military, cross-government, industry, or civil society. They covered confronting the challenge perspectives from the generation that matters, apparently, and they also covered the Chief of General Staff keynote, which was about force development and adaptability. Now, Michael Fallon was speaking at this conference, and I just thought we'd pick out a few little quotes from his speech. So here we go. First, it should be an integrated army. I don't mean an army that's better integrated with the Royal Navy and Royal Air Force. They're already doing it. I mean an army that is integrated with the whole of government.
That's quite a statement, Mark.
Right?
That's quite a statement.
What do you take out of that statement, Brian?
Well, the army is going to be politicised down to the lowest level of operations. So you're not going to have professional military whose job is to defend the country. You're going to have senior military personnel who will be part of the government machinery.
Right.
That's how I read it, anyway.
Okay, so let's go on. He said tomorrow's army is going to be working more closely than ever with the intelligence agencies, with the police and the Home Office to deter and respond to threats. What do you think about that one?
Well, now we see how the military is to be engaged, which is that we're now talking about paramilitary police, or we can't really tell who's going to be brought on our streets.
Right. And he went on to say, Army 2025, this is the new catch buzz phrase, Army 2025 will be international by design. He said that in other places as well. He said, make no mistake, regardless of the result of the referendum, we will remain a major international power with global responsibilities. He said, and this year we're not just looking back to the Anglo-French efforts on the Somme. This is really hypocritical, but anyway, we'll not say any more about that. But looking forward to the successful testing of our combined joint expeditionary force. And beyond that, I want Army 2025 to be the partner of choice for smaller nations.
Well,
you're laughing.
Well, I'm laughing because it's so obvious. What is going on here is you're effectively going to use the British Army, the British military, to get into the training role to overseas states. And then you're going to use their military capability to take the bloodshed at the front end. So this is very, very nasty, cynical use of British military, where we use the British military to help get other people to do the dirty work. Yeah.
Right. Well, now yesterday, Brian, you focused on the Franco-British Council and the dirty deal behind closed doors that brought us into this defence pact with the French and the blossoming EU military structures. I just thought I'd show the Franco-British Council website. Here we are, over 40 years of promoting Franco-British dialogue. Well, they actually have a special site called the Franco-British Council Defence website, which just focuses on defence matters. And as you can see, the latest news, which is a couple of months old now, is discussing the UK-France Summit 2016. So this is really the latest moves following the stuff that you were discussing on yesterday's programme. And David Cameron was there, of course. This is a couple of months old, but we didn't cover it at the time, and I thought it fits in with what we're discussing today. We have, as I say, a separate Defence Matters website, and this was held at Amiens, this conference. David Cameron was there, as I say, a determined contribution to peace, stability and security through a comprehensive defence cooperation. They were talking about validating the concept of the Combined Joint Expeditionary Force. Now, of course, this is the main outcome so far of the Defence Pact between Britain and France, and fits into the overall EU military integration situation, or the scene as we see it at the moment. They're talking about deepening cooperation on armaments, continuing cooperation on nuclear deterrence, establishing a joint working group on innovation, carrying out firm, determined action against Daesh in Syria and Iraq together, and liaising closely ahead of the NATO summit in July 2016. And then they go on to say, building upon the successful common security and defence policy operations and supporting the development of European Union strategy of foreign and security policy. So that's, once again, putting their weight behind the stuff that we were discussing with Alex Thompson on the programme yesterday. But what was also interesting about this UK-France summit was that while 80 or 90% of it was on defence matters, they also discussed France and the United Kingdom launching a high-level, quote, young leaders exchange programme to encourage the organisation of conferences of the cross-border cooperation sector, meeting alternately in France and the United Kingdom on all subjects related to our neighbourhood, which is migration, health, tourism and employment. So they're actually really wanting to merge us into one country, it seems.
And this is being done by the actions of a charity, Mike, Franco-British Council charity.
Yeah.
A charity which can call secret meetings under Chatham House rules, bring in foreign nationals alongside serving senior military officers and defence industry, British aerospace, where people are more or less so highly qualified that anything they speak about is taking them very close to the official secrets. So all of this done under the auspices of a charity, and all of this was set up so that when Cameron came in, all of a sudden we got this 50-year defence pact with the French, and this is how it was set up. And it's treason, Mike.
Yes, and it demonstrates very clearly, doesn't it, how the NGO complex isn't something which only operates in the Middle East or in Africa. It's absolutely at work in Britain and the United States and in Europe.
And we're now seeing a move towards the colour revolution in UK, in that we see these same agencies that have caused the chaos and the violence and the civil wars overseas. Those same agencies are now starting to flex their muscles in UK.
Yeah.
Dangerous times.
Yes. Now, just before we move on for this, David Cameron was speaking at that conference, and I just wanted to highlight this short quote from his speech. Turning to our bilateral defence cooperation, today we've agreed to jointly invest £1.5 billion to develop the next generation of a combat air system. So clearly no shortage of money for Anglo-French defence cooperation.
Well, I must say I'm a bit surprised, because I thought the government was totally short of money, but we've magicked up another 1.5 billion, as you do, because it's on war.
Yes. Well, we mentioned the upcoming NATO summit. Here is their latest propaganda piece. They are now putting out a graphic every day as we count down towards the summit. We've got 8 days to go. And 8 stands for the Kosovo force, currently including 8 NATO partners, so that's good. So there you go. And the NATO summit, well, let's look at what they're going to be doing. An essential alliance in a more dangerous world. Number one, they're going to be protecting their citizens. NATO's greatest responsibility is to protect its almost 1 billion citizens, they say. Number two, is projecting stability to safeguard security at home. NATO must also project stability beyond its borders. When the alliance's neighbours are stable, allies are more secure. So there you go. Number 4 says an alliance of shared values. The world is changing and NATO is changing with it. What remains unchanged is the strength of the transatlantic bond on which NATO is founded and the solemn commitment of each ally to the defence of all. So that's really sterling stuff as well. Now, you may have noticed that I didn't mention number 3 because this is probably the most important discussion topic for the NATO conference, and that is cooperation with the European Union. So closer cooperation between NATO and the EU is key to dealing with current and emerging security challenges from the East and the South and wherever they may arise. The two organisations are complementary. In the Aegean Sea, NATO is working with the EU closer than ever before. Both organisations continue to work together on missions in Afghanistan and Kosovo. At the Warsaw Summit, NATO will aim for a new level of reciprocal cooperation with the EU, focusing on concrete areas such as fighting hybrid and cyber threats, supporting partners in defence, capacity building, and increasing maritime security. And Brian, what I'm going to say to you is, for all the deniers that there is EU military integration, that there is any such thing as EU military integration or an EU military, this statement from NATO makes it clear that they certainly believe there is an EU structure with regard to military, because many EU nations are already members of NATO, but they're describing the EU as if it is a new member state, a member bloc.
This comes down to who's got the real power base, and of course we're not talking about governments, we're talking about massive financial power here. City of London, I think we're going to start talking about what the City of London is more and more. NATO is a construct, Cold War was a construct, NATO's a construct, now we're drifting across to the next construct. And of course the formation of the EU military and the EU superstate is simply one part of the objective of the Trilateral Commission, and we're seeing the formation of the European power bloc to form one of 3 with the Americas and Asia, Japan. So, I mean, this is high-level geopolitics that we're now starting to see very clearly because they're putting big pieces of the jigsaw together.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. Now, change, we hear about change all the time, change agents. Everybody's talking about change. And I suppose the phrase which is most associated, at least as far as we're concerned, with change is common purpose. And here we have common purpose. I wanted to highlight this section of the Common Purpose website, the massive online innovation community, a virtual space for common purpose participants and alumni to connect globally and turn ideas into impact. As the world's challenges increase in complexity, so does the rate of change and innovation. It is not enough to learn a new skill and not build it, establish relationships and not deepen them, or be inspired and not tap into its source. So the MOIC is an online platform that enables our participants and alumni to extend their common purpose experience and continue to build skills, ideas and relationships outside of their programs. So this is the secret network. This is the front end of it anyway. If you've got to log into this, you get access to the secret network of...
Well, and I'll say, Mike, that of course when a common purpose graduate was kind enough to expose the network going back about 8 years ago, and that list of thousands and thousands of graduates was put up on the internet, that's when people really started to pay attention to what this organisation was. And of course, what are they doing? The same thing again, a secretive organisation with their selected world leaders who can network behind the scenes. That's why I made the comment with the depression for the students, because if you're a student and you go to university and you work really hard, and you're not selected by common purpose, you're not going to go anywhere in the new world political machinery. So I still regard this organisation as immensely sinister. And of course, it was built with banking money, boasting of some of the banks that then probably went bust, like Lehman Brothers. Deutsche Bank put in a huge amount of money. Deutsche Bank in trouble at the moment. But they just continue. What are the qualifications of Julia Middleton to train world leaders? What are her qualifications?
Somebody in the chat box is saying the new Masons, and it seems to me that the Masonic movement, if it can be said to have any influence on society anymore at all, they're still living in the 19th century. They haven't brought themselves up to date. Common Purpose has taken technology, they've taken the Masonic model, and they have absolutely turned it into a technological platform, which makes it orders of magnitude more powerful. Yeah.
Well, this is true, and there are, as we've indicated before, there are some very, very interesting debates going on, and people within the Masonic movement who are themselves questioning what Common Purpose is about. So I suppose if we look on the bright side, Mike, people are starting to wake up. I think we need a warning for this one.
Yeah, we do warn anybody with a
weak disposition.
Yes, indeed. Now, this is a quote from Julia Middleton, the head of Common Purpose. Negotiate the complexities. Clearly, she wasn't quite able to negotiate the complexities of a jacket that didn't have holes in the sleeves. But anyway, we'll move on for that. But I just wanted to highlight this point from Ms. Middleton. Negotiate the complexities, because we're going to look at some serious Common Purpose complexity in a moment. This is the ASEAN Leaders Programme, a Common Purpose programme launched with the support of GE, big corporation, and its partnership with the ASEAN Foundation. The ASEAN Leaders Programme is an annual 2-part leadership development programme that seeks to bring together senior leaders from 10 ASEAN countries from all sectors and walks of life onto a common platform where they work together to address a carefully selected challenge relevant to the region. The challenge for the ASEAN Leaders Programme 2016 is what makes a city smart. So Common Purpose is absolutely behind this this move towards city, states, city regions at the moment. And this particular program was about what makes cities smart. Now, before we show you the inside buzz on the ASEAN Leaders Program, I just wanted to highlight this quote from Wouter van Versch, who's president of GE, and he says, as global citizens, we recognize the need for strong leadership to tackle the challenges of an ever-changing, complex and boundaryless world. At GE, we believe that the individual excellence of people and the collective progress that they will generate across all sectors and communities will pave the way to success. That's why we have partnered with Common Purpose to support the ASEAN Leaders Programme, as it enables us to invest in the development of local leaders that will be able to make a difference in the cities and communities where we are active in ASEAN, right? So keep that in mind. What we're talking about here is complexity. We're talking about the challenges of an ever-changing, complex and boundaryless world. And I just want to show you some of the tweets that have come out from Common Purpose today from this ASEAN leaders. Now, if anybody wonders why the world is so screwed up at the moment, bearing in mind the amount of leadership programs run by Common Purpose globally over the last 20 years, and the effect of the people that have been through these programs, the effect that these people are having on our society, this should give you a clue as to why it's such a mess. So let's just look a bit closer at one of these. What is going on here, Brian?
Well, this is a particularly vicious attack on the minds of the people taking part. They don't realise it, but they are being taken through a childlike process to try and bond them, bring them together. But at the same time, it's taking them out of their sphere of reality. If you look at online comments that people have made who've been through Common Purpose training, many of them actually say it was disturbing. I think there's a lady called Rice who was part of the Royal Bank of Scotland, and she said it challenges every prejudice you have. So the Common Purpose approach is that you are putting into people's heads, if you've got views and values, that is prejudice, and they're going to help wipe out that prejudice. So this is taking adults and putting them through childish games. And of course, this is how the NHS has been utterly destroyed. So we had an NHS, wasn't perfect, but it worked. Bring in Common Purpose, and now we've got the dead bodies coming out of the hospitals, Staffordshire. We've got vicious bullying taking place within the management structure, and we've got Common Purpose leadership teams now in most of the major NHS organisations. So this organisation, of course, hasn't gone away. It's actually It's actually quietened down in UK because you don't hear a lot about it operating in UK, but now it's got millions of pounds or euros probably in order to start this process for the worldwide network. It's people should be very, very concerned about this because, as you've just said, Mike, is why we're starting to see adults making completely crass decisions.
Some people may comment on this that well, just to explain to our listeners, I suppose. First of all, these people are playing games which you might, or it appears that they're playing games that you might imagine children playing in kindergarten. It's really childish stuff.
Well, one of the people who came to me in the early days to express concerns about common purpose had attended a common purpose course, adult professional person. And when I said, what did you do? They couldn't remember a lot of it, which I found very interesting. But one of the things they did say is that they played games. And when I said, what games did you play? They talked about having to write their name, company, position on a paper plate and put those paper plates on a table so that they were in the right position compared to other people. So you work in a local company. Where does your plate go in relation to somebody who's the chief executive of the local council? But that person later threatened, bullied, intimidated. And then they said the really scary thing is when they went to do something about that bullying and harassment, every person they went to for help, they discovered was a common purpose graduate and they didn't get the proper help. So a sinister organisation with a deeply political agenda. And what are they trying to do? Create these global leaders. Well, we've seen bizarre behaviour in many areas of the public sector. Let's bring in the police. And this is an extraordinary article here in the Daily Mail where an assistant chief constable allegedly exposed her breasts at a high-level police meeting. She's been home on leave and has earned about £14,000 doing nothing at home. She earns a huge amount of money. I think it's about £90,000 a year anyway. So this is the lady. It's an allegation because at the moment the police haven't managed to have any proper investigation. But Manchester Hilton, pictured, was where they had this high-level three-day senior women in police conference. This was another lady involved, probably innocent, judging by what the paper's report says, but she'd put out a tweet. So we've got a Superintendent Jackson who's centre of that tweet photo. How much would the Hilton cost for a 3-day event, Mike? Interesting, isn't it? So this was part of the report. So Sutcliffe, top of those pictures, here we are, earns around 109,000 a year plus benefits, provision of a car, business mileage, Chief Police Officers Staff Association insurance, 300 senior police women, including MI5 Chief Baroness Eliza Manningham-Buller, were at the event where Sutcliffe is alleged to have bared her breasts. So she's been at home. The public's paid her another £14,000 in that time. Well, I thought it was very interesting that this woman attended because, of course, if we remember her from MI5, she's the woman who refused to get in front of a joint committee on human rights, which wanted to ask her some pretty deep questions about torturing people. So she didn't want to answer those questions. She ran away. But this is the sort of woman that is brought in to brief senior police officers who I would imagine have got drunk and then started to take their clothes off. Were they common purpose trained? Well, the probability is quite high because the police has spent hundreds of thousands of pounds. So we got some key questions because the Daily Mail article was really, well, it was disgraceful. None of these questions were asked. How much did the event cost? What was discussed? What benefits did the public get? Why was a woman who condones torture present? And there's still no investigation. There's still no follow-up of disciplinary action. We don't know who was responsible. None of this covered by the Daily Mail. So who was the reporter? Well, we're getting very keen on this. If you see these articles, we like to go and have a look. So here's Jake Polden's Twitter page. He's very big on foreign holidays and food. Let's bring him in so that we know who we're dealing with. So this is from an earlier article in the Mail. He's cooling off with a refreshing drink. And I'm going to say, is this young man capable of understanding, let alone investigating, the real implications of senior police officers exposing their breasts in public? I think we've really got to stick with this, because at the moment, the press and the media are making a mockery of the public because there's no investigation, there's no proper comment. And I think it's up to the public to pick these organisations up. How do you do that? Over the internet, or of course stop buying the Daily Mail is the way to deal with the problem.
Well, speaking of torture, this is Baroness Annally of St John's. She works for the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. She was speaking yesterday in the map room of the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, and this was to mark the 10th anniversary of OPCAT. Come on to that in a second. She said the UK is determined to strengthen its voice in the international system on the important human rights priority of torture prevention. She said today is the 10th anniversary of the entry into force of OPCAT, as is commonly known. I believe in the words of Lord Acton, a reforming 19th century member of the House of Lords, who famously said that power tends to corrupt and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Torture thrives on secrecy and deniability, on lack of oversight. It thrives where prisoners are held alone, incommunicado, denied visits or representation. It thrives when convictions can be based on a forced confession alone without investigation of the injuries the accused has acquired in custody. This is where OPCAT comes in, she says, as a truly modern 21st century instrument which goes beyond a simple declaration that torture is wrong. The OPCAT recognises that all detention systems can become places where torture happens either by means of the festering development of a policy of abuse or because individuals exploit their unchecked power of control over a helpless inmate. To eliminate that tendency requires oversight, vigilance and monitoring. A prison officer will not torture an inmate who is about to meet a prison visitor. An interrogator will not give way to excess if his actions are being monitored and overseen. A legal system where due process is respected will not tolerate duress. I can reassure you today of the UK's commitment to being a strong voice in the United Nations and promoting ratification of OPCAT around the world. So what is OPCAT? Well, here we are. It is the optional protocol on the Convention Against Torture. The optional protocol.
Well, I'm glad it's optional because, of course, UK will opt out as soon as possible because we are involved as a nation state in the torture of people.
Well, the key point is here that this was adopted by the United Nations General Assembly in New York on the 18th of December 2002, and it entered into force in 2006, but it was adopted and promoted by the UK at the time, beginning in 2002. And of course, in the years around 2002 up to 2006 or so, Britain was involved in extraordinary rendition and the torture of prisoners.
Absolutely.
So the hypocrisy here is spectacular.
Yeah, which is brings Kim Jong-un of North Korea back into focus because while he's branded the dictator, we've got a UK system doing exactly the same things. Well, we always like it when we get communication from viewers and listeners who are picking up on what we're talking about and want to get information out. We received this email this morning from a retired social worker. You may well be interested in this link from Terry Murphy's Swan Action Network. He runs a Facebook page with social workers who are proactive thinkers. Terry put this community care page out as many social workers are troubled deeply about what is happening for families and social workers. Many experienced social workers are leaving the profession. I am a retired social worker and do not recognise the profession any longer and would not return. The future for social workers, and more importantly, the families who come into contact with local authority, children and family services, appear to become lost, or becoming lost in a future that is highly concerning, to say the least. So that was a pretty potent email, and we followed the link through very quickly, and we were fascinated to find this. There's to be a new government agency which is going to replace the Health and Care Professionals Council. This is all coming through as part of the Children and Social Work Bill, which is actually going through Parliament at the moment. And the agency that's being set up is going to be accountable to the Education Secretary and based in the Department of Education. So we got something really nasty going on here, Mike. We are now starting to integrate social services into the education system. This, to me, is another backdoor move to an English named person scheme.
Yes.
So thank you very much for sending that through. We will continue to look at that, but if you've got any more information, please let us have it.
Now, just to finish off, I wanted to highlight the Cryptome website. Now, of course, this is a website which has had carried documents that have been whistleblown on or released through leaks for 20 years now. They are marking their 20-year anniversary this month. It's been around for lots of years, longer than WikiLeaks, for example. So the documents that are on there are absolutely raw, so you won't get any articles. This is about raw research and going and doing some research for yourself. So I just wanted to highlight Cryptome and say well done for a great job over the last 20 years.
Excellent. And of course, truth, evidence, exposure, key weapons to stopping what's going on. If you're all sat there thinking, what do we do to stop what's happening through Westminster? The answer is exposure, because these people cannot function when the wider public really understand what's going on. So what a brilliant opportunity at the moment. We know that there are those 17 million people who are awake enough, motivated enough to say no to the European Union. What we need is to be pumping the information into that sector so that they really understand the treason that's being carried out by Westminster as the Brexit is delayed in order to link us further into the EU. Well, that brings us to the end of today's news. Tomorrow we'll be joined by David Scott from Northern Exposure, and amongst other things we'll be catching up on problems within the Scottish child abuse investigation, and we'll also be having a look at that horrific case of the Doherty family, where the Scottish state has taken their children via Ireland for simply reporting the approaches of a paedophile. And all of the Brian and Janice Doherty interviews should be up on the UK column
by the end of today.
By the end of today.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you haven't listened to any of the interviews which David Scott did, please listen to them, because we know from reactions that people are astonished, I think, is what they are hearing from this young couple. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll be back same time tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.